It was November 1962. The world had just breathed a huge sigh of relief as the Cuban Missile Crisis was brought to a peaceful resolution. The Beatles had just released their first single, and the idea of a personal computer had just appeared in the press for the first time. And a remarkable book was about to be published. It wasn't the content of the book that was astonishing. Bernard Shaw's play Androcles and the Lion was 50 years old by this stage. But this edition was special. It witnessed the birth of an entirely new alphabet. And it almost never happened. The Shaw alphabet, now more commonly known by the Latinised name of Shavian, was the outcome of a lifetime of advocacy by Irish playwright, writer and wit, Bernard Shaw. Over the course of decades, Shaw wrote often on the subject. In one of his famous prefaces, Shaw said, "The waste of time in spelling imaginary sounds and their history, or the etymology as it is called, is monstrous in English and French." And he called for a new alphabet and a new orthography. Shaw was active on a wide range of social causes, from women's rights to Fabian socialism. He usually sought to use humour to make his case, saying, "My method is to take the utmost trouble to find the right thing to say, and then to say it with the utmost levity." Yet alphabet reform was, perhaps, the subject on which Shaw wrote most earnestly. His friend G.K. Chesterton mocked him with good-natured wit, writing that Shaw found himself led by the mad imp of modernity on the side of people who want to have phonetic spelling, and that Shaw pleasantly surprised innumerable cranks and revolutionists by finding quite rational arguments for them. Perhaps in response to such mockery, Shaw wrote, "I must repeat with all possible emphasis that the scheme is purely economic. Its object is to save time and labour, whether in producing books or newspapers, or teaching children to read, write and speak." But Shaw himself would never see the alphabet that would bear his name. After years of frustration, Shaw decided to pursue reform by leaving money in his will for the establishment of a trust to create and publicise a so-called British alphabet. When Shaw died on the 2nd of November 1950, his curious will attracted a lot of attention. Shaw's will specified that his proposed British alphabet was to contain at least 40 letters. It was to allow English to be written with one symbol for each sound without indicating single sounds by groups of letters or diacritical marks. Shaw made his purely utilitarian motivation clear in typical style. His will specified that the advocacy work of the Alphabet Trust must not have regard to, and I quote, "the views of professional and amateur phoneticians, etymologists, spelling reformers, patentees of universal languages, inventors of shorthand codes for verbatim reporting or rival alphabets, teachers of the established orthography, disputants about pronunciation, or of the irreconcilables whose wranglings have overlooked and confused the single issue of labour saving and made change impossible during the last 100 years. Unfortunately for Shaw's wishes, his will became more famous after his death and known to every law student for the battle to overturn it. Shaw's estate amounted to millions of pounds sterling in today's terms, all of which was to be dedicated to the new alphabet. And the value of Shaw's estate continued to grow and grow after his death due to royalties from the hit musical My Fair Lady, which was based on Shaw's play 𝑒𝑮𝑗𝑔𝑚. So the stakes were high, and Shaw's will was too unusual to go unchallenged. Two institutions that were to receive any money left over from the work to promote the new alphabet, the British Museum and the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, joined the court action to contest the will. A third institution, the National Gallery of Ireland, stated in court that it did not wish to put forward any argument to defeat the intention of a very distinguished fellow Irishman in a matter that was very dear to his heart. But in a crushing blow to Shaw's final wish, Mr. Justice Harman finally ruled with some regret that the Alphabet Trust was invalid. It was 1957 and the dream seemed to be over. Undeterred, two prominent supporters of Shaw's alphabet reform, James Pitman MP, whose grandfather had invented Pitman shorthand, and Barbara Smoker of the Shaw Society, urged an appeal. The appeal was brought and the matter was finally settled out of court. The British Museum, the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, and the National Gallery of Ireland agreed to £8,300 being used to carry out Shaw's wishes. With money finally secured, the process of designing the new alphabet could finally begin. A worldwide competition with a prize of £500 was announced. The competition attracted a lot of interest. 467 entrants from all over the world put their mind to the audacious task of inventing a whole new way of writing English. Of these, 4 winners were chosen to share the prize: 𝑠𝑙𝑝𝑾𝑯, Pauline M. Barrett, Kingsley Reid and J.F. McGrath. But none of the 4 winning alphabets fully satisfied the judges. Peter McCarthy of Leeds University's Department of Phonetics, who would transliterate 𝑖𝑗𝑒𝑗 and the lion as soon as the new alphabet was ready, urged the judges to work with one or more of the winners to finalise the design. Each winner was invited to submit revisions. The revised design submitted by Kingsley Reid, a designer from Worcester, was found to best meet the requirements of the judges, and Reid was appointed the official designer to complete the work. Kingsley Reid was no stranger to the cause. He had unusually won praise from Shaw himself during his lifetime for earlier attempts at alphabet design, and had worked closely with James Pitman to promote the competition. It was little surprise then that just 1 month after his appointment as designer he had completed his work. He had secured his place as the man who invented the alphabet. With the small matter of the alphabet's design settled, on the 22nd of November 1962, 12 years after Bernard Shaw's death, the Shaw alphabet edition of 𝑖𝑗𝑒𝑗 and the Lion was published. A hardback edition was distributed to all major libraries around the world, and paperbacks were sold to curious members of the general public. And there was some initial flourishing of interest. The Imperial Typewriter Company even developed a Shavian alphabet version of its Good Companion model. Kingsley Reid used one such typewriter to produce a newsletter, Shaw Script, which ran to 8 editions. But by the late 1960s, interest had waned. Reid had moved on to other projects, and Peter McCarthy, the transliterator of 𝑖𝑗𝑒𝑗 and the Lion, had begun to speculate if Shaw had meant the whole thing as a joke. The Shavian alphabet had seemingly become a historic curiosity. But the story doesn't end there, and another time I will explore what has happened since. James Pitman wrote somewhat prophetically in the late 1950s that Shaw was indeed not unintelligent, rather he was insufficiently understood. Many of his ideas were so novel and penetrating that they were rejected by his contemporaries. And this idea was so novel and so demanding in its need to think freshly that very few people have yet understood it. Shaw saw alphabet reform as the work of centuries. He envisaged the new alphabet being used alongside the Latin alphabet, just as Hindu-Arabic numerals came, after long resistance, to be used alongside and mostly preferred to Roman numerals. It's not yet 60 years since the Shavian alphabet made its debut, and the history of centuries has yet to be written. Will the Shavian alphabet or something like it ever achieve widespread use? The answer to that is, in part, in your hands as an English speaker. But if the alphabet of Shaw's dreams has achieved one thing, it's to prove that English, as a living language, does not have to remain hostage to the spellings of centuries past.